In this video, we will do a definition of a derivative practice problem involving a rational function. So the question says to let g of x be x minus 3 over 4x plus 1, and we want to find the derivative with the definition of a derivative. So I want to start by giving you 6 minutes to try this on your own. So 4, 3, 2, 1, pause it and try it for 6 minutes first. Alrighty, so hopefully you've done that. Hopefully you paused it and tried this for about 6 minutes. Let's talk about it together. So I'm going to use the limit form as h goes to 0, but we could also do it as x approaches a. I'm going to save an x approaches a one for my next video, but we could use either form. In this form, we have g of x plus h minus g of x over h. Notice I'm writing g instead of f because my function is g of x, not f of x. All right, so this is the limit as h approaches 0. And g of x plus h, well, let's plug in x plus h for each of these x's. We'll get x plus h minus 3, and then over 4 times plugging in x plus h, and then plus 1. Okay. So that's part of the top of this fraction. And then we have to do minus, I'll leave myself a little bit of room, minus g of x. And g of x is just x minus 3 over 4x plus 1. And we have this all over that h on the bottom. So on the numerator now, we have these two fractions that we're subtracting, and they have different denominators. So we need to get a common denominator. Let's do that in the next, let me actually do it in the next step. So even though I left a room here, let me do it in the next step. So we have x plus h minus 3 over, let me distribute the 4 to get 4x plus 4h plus 1 over the h minus x minus 3 over 4x plus 1. Now let's get a common denominator. So I'll multiply this first fraction on the top and the bottom by this other denominator, 4x plus 1 over 4x plus 1, and oops, big old parentheses. And then I'll multiply this other fraction top and bottom by the 4x plus 4h plus 1. So my other denominator, 4h plus 1. Okay, so we have the limit as h approaches 0. And now let's multiply these fractions. So on the numerators, I'm going to distribute out. So when we do that, I'm going to first distribute this 4x to each of these terms. Okay, in doing that, I'll get 4x squared plus 4xh minus 12x. And then let's distribute that 1 to each of those terms. So distribute the 1 to each of these terms. So that'll give us, let's see, plus x, and then plus h, minus 3. So we will have that. And then I'm going to start to write this all over. This denominator, this 4x plus 4h plus 1, and then times that 4x plus 1. I'm not going to distribute out those denominators because I like having that denominator in factored form. Okay, so I've gotten a common denominator. To make those denominators the same, I'm just going to leave that denominator factored. It'll turn out later that a cancellation will happen in the numerator, so I do want to expand the numerator to see that happen. Okay, and then let's just combine these into one fraction. So this minus sign I got to write, and let me make sure that I don't forget to distribute it. So let's put a big old bracket, and now let's start to distribute these other numerator terms. So I got to do x minus 3 times 4x plus 4h plus 1. So first let's distribute the x to each of these terms, and that'll give me, let's see, 4x squared, and then plus 4xh plus x. And now I'll distribute the minus 3 to get minus 12x minus 12h. Might need a little bit more room. And then minus 3. Okay, let's close that bracket. And we have this whole thing over, that h on the bottom. And I'm going to rewrite that as a fraction, as h over 1. Okay, so it's a long expression, but we're getting there. Okay, so now a bunch of cancellation is going to happen when we distribute that negative sign. Let's just do that. 4x squareds, these are going to cancel. 4xh's, they're going to cancel. let's see, the minus 12x, this plus x, and the minus 3's. So that is super nice. The only thing that does not cancel is I have this h, and then I'll get a minus negative 12h. So double negative becomes a positive. So overall, I'll have 13h, and then over the 4x plus 4h plus 1 times 4x plus 1. And then finally, when I divide by this h over 1, that's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. 1 over h. Okay, and I promised this cancellation later, and here is the h on the bottom canceling with this one on the top. Okay, so now that we've canceled that, that was sort of the problem with plugging in h equals 0 before, because of this h on the bottom. Now that that's gone, now I can plug in, which leaves me with 13 on the top. On the bottom, I get 4x plus 0 plus 1 times 4x plus 1, and that is 13 over 4x plus 1, 4x plus 1 squared. And that is my derivative.